Okay, let me start now. So, a very warm welcome to all ISPIC participants to the 14th webinar of the Smart 14, the India Smart 14 Innovation Challenge 2021. And this specific webinar will be focused on proposal writing. I am Akshay Bhatt, the Cultivated Meat Science and Technology Specialist with GFI India, and I'll be hosting this session alongside Harish Handral. So we also have Devika Suresh as well as Shardul Dabir from Team Innovation of GFI India for support. So basically, coming to the rules of engagement, as usual, you as a participant can use the Q&A button for questions to the speaker. Also feel free to use the chat, but please do not use it for other topics or any internal discussions. Also, after the webinar, we'll have a Q&A sessions where all questions from the participants will be answered, as well as we'll be giving the option for participants to go live to ask the questions. Please click the raise your hand button by clicking on the participant button at the bottom center of your computer or phone screen probably, or you could raise your hand as well. So coming to our speaker for the session today, we have Dr. Harish Handral, who's a scientist at ASTEM, Allogenic Stem Cell Manufacturing, A*STAR Singapore. Harish has a background in stem cell engineering and has been inspired by the cutting edge developments happening in the science and technology areas of the alternative protein sector. With more than 5 years of stem cell as well as tissue engineering research expertise, Harish has helped generate more than $150,000 in research funding revenue and has co-authored more than 30 publications in high impact journals, supporting several successful research grant applications as well. So currently his group is developing scalable cell expansion technologies using a microcarrier platform to facilitate the goal of using stem cells for cell therapy and are also exploring avenues for expanding its application towards producing cultivated meat. So a very warm welcome to you, Harish.
Thank you, Akshay. Thank you for a brief introduction.
So moving on, I would like to thank our generous sponsors without whose support ISPIC 2021 would not have been possible. Our title sponsor, Capri Global, our key sponsors, NICE as well as Alchem Foundation, organizing partners CII Co, supporting partners BIRAC, NIFTM, CCAMP, AIC, CCMB, IIT Madras, Bioincubator, Sign as well as Able. Our ecosystem enabling partners, Blue Horizon, DSG, Fixie, Brink, Ankur Capital, Axidor Labs, ProVich, Omnivore, Agni, Ahimsa Ventures, Bigadia Ventures, and Huddle. So we have almost 150 candidates representing 24 states and over 60 cities in India. And we have a coverage of more than 100 unique universities and colleges, organizations across India, as well as potential startups and teams participating in this webinar. So before Harish jumps into his presentation, I'd just like to say that grant support is very critical to help, let's say, early stage science and technology innovators, like the teams and entrepreneurs we have today participating in this webinar to achieve early proof of concept for their ideas. However, the number of startups or teams applying for such grants continues to grow every year across the world. And if you're planning to apply for a grant, it is very critical to ensure that your application stands out from the competition. So today, Harish will be discussing in detail some key considerations to keep in mind while charting out your proposal for funding, such as fundamental approaches to define problem statements, forming hypothesis methods and strategies, and avoiding certain deal breaker mistakes. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Harish to present his webinar on proposal writing. Over to you, Harish.
Thank you, Akshay. Let me share my screen first. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, GFI India, Akshay, Shardul, for inviting me for this wonderful webinar on ISPIC Inspiration webinar on proposal writing. As Akshay already introduced my brief background, that I am from BTI A*STAR. Like I work as an associate staff scientist. I have like 10 plus years of experience as a stem cell biologist. I work on cutting edge technologies such as 3D printing and also microcarrier factors, and also the cell culture expertise. Published some 25 plus papers. Have filed some international patents, and also attended 10 plus conferences across the globe. Also have experience in working in multiple countries, and got an opportunity to build an stem cell startup company. And I have been fortunate to be part of stem cell projects, both industrial and academic, of worth nearly $1 million. So this is just my Google Scholar profile, just to share that about my citations of my paperworks and all. So let's start with the proposal writing. So before we start about what and how the proposal should be written. So before that, we should understand what is the role of proposal in a project. So in a project cycle, we have to start with the conceptualizing of the idea. So which helps us to lead to plan for the actions, and also to monitor the our action plans, and which helps us to like followed by the execution, and also the follow-up of our action plan, which again leads to analysis and adaptations based on the execution and the changes happening in the action plan. And obviously, again, we have to learn and share by sharing with the peers and with the collaborators. So this is how the project cycle goes into. And okay, so moving forward, I would like to have an polling session just to understand the audience, how they are experienced with writing their proposals. Akshay, can we help to have a polling session for this?
So actually, we haven't pre-fed the poll. We'll need
Okay.
a couple of minutes to do that. I would suggest we can actually ask people to just write in the chat box and get a tentative idea.
Sure, sounds good. That's also fine. No problem.
Great. So if you all the attendees, if you can just out of the three options,
So
1,
maybe,
2, 3,
yeah, 1,
just
2,
say 1, 2, or 3 in the chat box. That would be great.
So just have a look.
All right. So I'll say it's a 50-50 mix of 1 and 2, and very few people are saying 3. In fact, very few. In fact, nobody said 3 till now. So I'd say most people are new and are kind of looking to, really get the basics of how a good proposal is structured.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Abdul, for that. So I understand that most people are in 1 and 2 phase, so which is helpful for me to sort of like help you to understand how the proposal has to be written. So moving forward, to write the proposal, we have to understand the state of art, what is involved during the writing the proposal. First is we have to communicate our ideas very clearly in the proposals, which should be understandable and demonstrate your clear thinking of your ideas, which could help you to demonstrate your role of proposal in the project cycle, thus persuading and funding body so that it can help you to add value to their support, and thus conveying your idea in an effective manner to create a larger impact on socio-economical scale. So these are the like state of the art which should be included while considering and writing of a proposal. Okay, so then this is just an brief overview like how the proposal writing should be planned. So first is an phase of ideation, so where you actually work with your novel ideas and come up with and discussion with your friends, your co-founders, or even with your mentors, then plan a strategy on how to boost up the idea and how to make it more concrete. So then obviously after that, so then you build up a strategy and then apply those build strategies and plannings to achieve an successful application. Okay, so after this, there are a few factors which you should consider while writing a proposal. So first is hypothesis, in which you generally work on how and why this particular idea would help to build up an proper product or for the market. So you have to build a hypothesis how this will help, and then we have to understand the science behind it and how your current technologies or the current platforms would enhance the science to make it as a wonderful impact in terms of business or in terms of adding value to the ecosystem. And lastly, of course, the team is one of the important factor which plays role in the entire proposal. So it should be like having an proper team of engineers or scientists, or even with the people with the business acumen. So these are the few factors which you need to keep in mind while writing the proposals. So after that, I would like to share on the structure of an effective proposal, which starts with a background information. So when it is of background information, it's about what is actually being done now. For example, in terms of let's say we take an example of proposing an idea of cultivated meat product. Okay, so you have to write an background information of how is the animal farming is done, how is the meat is produced now. Okay, so all those information of the challenges and what is the science and what is the technology involved in getting the current platform for the meat production. So after which you have to understand the knowledge gap. What is the knowledge gap between the your proposed idea and the current practices of developing of getting the meat produced. So that's how that's where you have an leverage to conceptualize your idea to make it more clearly visible to the funding body or to the readers. So after which you will be writing clear aims and objectives, which would help you to channelize your idea into specific aims and objectives, which could be understandable by any funding body and also the reviewers. After that, you have to show the proposed methods or procedures where you can prove or you can prove your aims or objectives, how you gonna address them using what methods or what procedures. So then obviously if you have resources enough to get and pilot data or sort of like preliminary data, it is good to always add some supporting data if you have access to get some supporting data. If not, it's fine to sometimes some funders do accept that including supporting data from other published data, or obviously by citing them. So it's an value added if you add the supporting data, but some proposals, they don't consider it as a mandatory option. And then obviously you have to write some anticipated or estimated results. So what you actually thinking to get from this proposal, and show some business opportunities on this, on your conceptualization of idea. So coming back to again on the polling two, so maybe which would help me to understand among the all options below, which would be the most difficult part for you to write in the proposals. So maybe you can share in the chat, so then I can understand your views on it.
Obviously, if it's something else, please try to in the bracket, if you're choosing something else, if you can mention what are the parts from the evaluation criteria or usual aspects of a proposal you find difficulty in writing, please do mention that.
So I can understand based on the current messages, I can sense that the budget is the main concern for people.
Yeah, I think from based on all the responses, it's implementation, budget, and I think some people are also saying planning. So I think it's a mix, but fairly, I think executive summary people are comfortable with, and largely some aspects of project goals, objectives, and activities and outputs people are comfortable with.
Yeah. So let's take like executive summary and budget. So for the executive summary, you have to mention on what kind of experience you have in terms of business or in terms of technical side of your team. So that's what the executive summary is about. And for the budget part, I will be having a separate slide for it. So where I will speak more on the budget part. Okay. Then moving forward. So to coming back to the effective proposal structure. So in the background information, as I shared earlier, so you have to introduce the basic science and technology, where you have to mention about your current technology, what it is being practiced, and what kind of challenges is facing, and what is the problem. So as I said just now about the taking an idea of developing cultured meat from stem cells as a proposal idea. So you have to mention about the basic science and technology involved in the or basic platform or basic sort of procedures involved in the conventional method of meat and meat production, and what is the problem. Obviously we all know that the problem is of like land usage, water problem, and greenhouse gases. All those things we can mention in brief in the background information. So then comes your same the current practices and the challenges, then why this needs to be solved. So then comes why question of why this has to be changed. So we have to mention of like we need more meat and animal cruelty, and by 2050 will be 10 billion people. So all these things we have to mention here in the background information. I'm just taking cultured meat as an example, so we can relate and connect easily for all the audience. I hope this is fine for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just quickly adding a little bit here. So basically, what Dr. Harish said is very, very right in terms of background information. But the end goal shouldn't be that all proposals are talking about the same things, because you'll find the same talking points in our reports, etc., about land use, water use, and everything will look similar. So depending on what specific solution you're offering and what topic in RFP or problem statement in track 1 and track 2 you're working, make sure that based on whatever he said, you're contextualizing it with specific examples, citations, data, so that it highlights your case a little bit better. Just
thanks Atul for adding that. Okay, so then now coming to the knowledge gap. So where you have to add a larger impact of your current approach or of your idea. So how your idea would help in addressing those challenges or those problems which the conventional method is facing it. So for example, you can say that in terms of, again, I'm just considering cultured meat as an example. So in terms of that, so you can say that this would help in animal welfare and reducing the CO2 carbon footprint and all those information in the larger impact. Okay, so then your idea would address your existing challenges, saying that okay, this will be of less time consumption and less water and less land use when compared to the conventional methods. Okay, so how you have to mention also how your idea brings business for long-term run. So what is the business or market available for your idea? Either it may be cultured meat or even the edible scaffolds or even the animal-free component culture medium, and even cell line banking also. And then we have to mention brief strategy of how you want to go to market strategy for your specific idea or your product line. Okay. So after this, let's go into the how you want to design your hypothesis. So hypothesis design is completely based on what you're actually looking forward to write the proposal on. Okay, so I have some couple of examples just as in reference, so that you can connect and relate to this. Let's say like we have a proposal on cell line banking. Okay, so you have to just focus on what kind of different cell lines or why you want to have an cell line banking. Either it may be an specific species or not easily available species, or you want to solve the issue of isolating the cells from every time from the tissue. So you want to use some IPS based or other CRISPR based or even other platforms. So that can be your hypothesis based on the cell line. So as I said, it is totally depends on what you're choosing. So if you're choosing on the culture media perspective for your proposal, again that varies from like why culture media or serum free, animal component free, and we all know that how the FBS is isolated, so it is very brutal, and it's not slaughter free. So all those things could be your hypothesis why you want to write an culture media based proposal. So same thing for bioprocess solutions and also for the scaffolding technology. So you have to build a story of why you want to write an proposal having a background of this specific solutions you're looking for in your proposals. And in hypothesis, it's also very important to show an visionary end product. So let's say like if you're building an cell-based meat proposal, so you have to show that what will be your end product should look like, or estimated end product should look like in your briefly in your hypothesis. Okay. So then moving forward to the aims and objectives and methods part. So where you have to apply SMART method. So that is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timeline. So you have to be very specific while writing your aims and objectives, very specific while writing your methods. So it should be very specific on what specific protocol or procedures you will be following, either to isolate the cells or even culturing or even scaling up the cells or even processing the scaffolds. So all this has to be very specific in all these sections, and it should be measurable in terms of like it shouldn't be over calculative or overestimated aims, or it shouldn't be over estimated objectives. So it should be measurable in terms of how specific and how attainable you can be to achieve those proposed objectives. And obviously those objectives should be realistically fit in the timeline you have proposed, or the timeline the proposal has given for, either it may be 2 years or 1 year. Sometimes it may be some bigger grants or bigger proposals will be of 5 years. So you have to change you have to address your specific aims and objectives based on the timeline given by the funding body. So for example, I just wrote a few lines for just to have an example. So my aim of one project would be developing meat products using stem cells and edible culture medium and scaffolds to obtain sustainable, nutritious meat products to feed the planet. So this is one of the aims of one of the example proposal. Okay, so in example 2, so I'm writing creating sustainable nutrition and healthy cell-based meat products to feed the planet. So in this, like in example 1 and 2, I found example 2 is not really following the SMART method. So because in example 1, I'm highlighting specificity of using stem cells, edible culture medium, and scaffolds. But whereas in example 2, so I'm not, this is nothing mentioned about what is the source, how is the edibility is solved, how is the adherence of cells would be solved to achieve the meat. So all these things has not addressed in example. So this is how you can craft your aims and objectives for while writing the proposal. Okay. Then moving forward to the deliverables. So in the deliverables is about as I said, the proposals will be for 1 to 3 years, or sometimes it will be even 1 year. So you have to customize your deliverables based on your milestones, which you think you can achieve in quarter 1, 2, 3, or 4 in that specific year. So I have to mention, for example, let's say like in year 1, I will say that cell line product or the development of the cell line will be achieved in quarter 1 and 2 of first year. So then you will work on the expansion of the cells and adaptability to the culture medium of the cells in year 2. So it's entirely depends on what your proposal is about, and you have to segregate your aims and your objectives in the deliverables, so that the funder should understand what you're going to achieve in which year and in which quarter of year. So that is sort of like you're giving an estimated timeline and proposal, so that by end of 3 years you'll be having this many of deliverables will be achieved. Okay. Then coming to the budget part, which most of you have questions on it. So budget is generally divided based on the funding is provided. Let's say it's in 1 million or 2 million fund for like 1 or 3 years. So it's generally divided on the manpower, equipment, and OOE, that is other operating expenses. So in the manpower, it's generally divided based on the scientists you hire or the technicians you're allowed to take in that specific proposal, and even the engineers. So you have to be more specific. How many? What is the qualification? How many number of manpower? For which year, and what will be the total number of manpower fund assigned from the entire budget. The same thing for the equipment. So you have to mention like which kind of specific equipment you can you want to purchase, or you want to take servicing for like outside servicing, contract-based servicing, and all those things you can mention in the equipment. So some people actually consider the equipment servicing in OOE, but some people do mention in the equipment also. So we have to see like how the guidelines of the specific funding body is. So and coming to the materials, that is cells, tissue culture flask, and pipettes, culture medium, all those things come in OOE. So which should be mentioned clearly here, and should also fit to your budgeted fund, which they would have given you the limit of the fund they will be funding you. Okay, so if you have any questions on this, we can speak back again after my entire presentation. Okay. Then coming to the main part is key performance indicators. So this is also called as KPI. So this is how the funders will assess your KPIs based on what you propose in year one. Let's say year one you are proposing as a minimal viable product, also called as MVP. So saying that okay, by end of year one or early year two, so you are saying the funders to expect a minimum viable products. So you should be able to sort of ready to deliver that kind of item, so based on that you have to mention your key performance indicator in this table. So this basically is in one of an critical table to mention in the proposal. And don't try to overemphasize or don't try to overestimate your KPIs in this table. So same thing for like if you are filing a patent or publications, you have to mention that that also consider under performance indicators. And obviously the collaborations, and if you're using it for R&D or even for scale up, so you can mention those factors also in the KPI table. Okay, so I would like to share some tips and tricks, so which are, I feel they are very important to have an effective proposal, and to make sure that the funders fund your proposals. Okay, so I would, based on my experience, networking is the key to make sure you have proper funds for your project, and to make sure that the application which you have submitted for your funding proposal should be like sort of funded or gets through it. So why networking is important is, so networking helps you to collaborate. So it opens the collaboration, which enhances your process, innovativeness, and overall progress of your entire project. Okay, so it also works on like based on how the R&D and the innovation, or even the technology which you can enhance in your proposal. The collaborators can help you to sort of increase your effectiveness of your proposal. Okay, so then in where to collaborate is, it's better to look for universities and institutes who are sort of expert, or who are actively working in this in your specific proposed idea or area of research. Not specifically your proposed idea, but at least in the area of research. And then this would help you to bring value to your proposal, and brings an more business value, I would say. Okay, so that's why the networking is key. So now how to collaborate. Okay, so we all know that, okay, we say that, okay, we know how to write the paper, how to write the proposal now, how to write the hypothesis, design, budget, so everything is done. So now, like if you want to collaborate, how to find the collaboration. Okay, so I designed, like based on my experience, I designed few simple tricks. Is first is explore, communicate, and express. Okay, so how to explore and where to explore. Okay, so use LinkedIn, Google, Good Food Institute database. They have a lot of database on the alternative protein, and also attend as much as possible alternative protein events and talks. So when I say attend, no, don't just attend. So try to ask the question. So that increases your visibility, and also increases your intention of being collaborative to the other third party also. So they would also help. They would also think that, okay, this person is really interested to collaborate. So that shows your interest towards his or her collaboration capacities. So after that, try to communicate with those people through either emails or Zoom meetings or even in-person meetings. If considering the COVID era, if your location or if your if you're allowed to have an in-person, try to do that. Some people do share WhatsApp. I personally do share WhatsApp for easy and convenience chat. So, but before directly asking to the WhatsApp, try to start communication with the emails. So, which would help you to build the rapport, understand your sort of idea. They should get, you also should get trust over them, then try to share your idea. So before that, don't try to share your idea over the emails. So then have an gist of like how they sort of take your idea or entertain your idea over the Zoom meetings when you have the face-to-face interaction, which gives you more trust, and more in-person meetings also gives you more trust, and you can build from there for expressing your ideas. In terms of review papers, try to write review papers. Let's say we have some collaborators who are beyond India or beyond your region. Okay, so you can try to write review papers by proposing your not exactly the idea which you want to write in your proposal, but at least similar idea which would add value to you and also to the collaborator. So it will be a win-win situation that will help the collaborator to think, okay, you're a valuable person to write proposals and future grants. And if you're looking for PhDs or master degree, so you can even write co-joint scholarships on even the funds who can, the professor or the collaborator can accumulate you for your degrees. So this is the sort of key for how to collaborate. Okay. Then another important stuff which is in the writing proposal is connecting the dots. So when you write an existing proposal, right? So existing approach, when you write a proposal, so you mention an existing approach. Okay, what is the problem with the existing approach, and how what and how you proposed idea would help you to build a realistic and create a business value. Okay, so I will give you a few examples on this. For example, we all know, again coming back to my example of cultured meat. So we all know the existing approach is animal farming. Okay, it has issue of land, water, and greenhouse gas emission. Okay, so you're connecting the dots from, okay, animal agriculture issues. Okay, so this is the problem and this is your solution. Cultured meat, you take the biopsy from animals, stem cells, differentiation cells, and then get tissues out of it. So this is sort of your proposed idea, and you should say that how this would help. So this would help in reduction of global warming, reduction of land use, and other benefits also, obviously health benefits also. Then you mention, okay, this is the market value and market demand for the global meat consumption, or the even for the cultured meat market value. So this is how you have to connect your dots so that the funders or the reviewers can easily understand your proposal, so that they should feel more confident on reviewing and more processing your proposals. Okay, so after among all this, so I found this is one of an important factor while writing the proposal. So each funding body and each funders has a different review process. Okay, so try to understand before submission or before you even starting to write a proposal, what is the most important factor to the funders. Okay, so either it's either it starts with an alignment of the proposed idea, should be within the scope and the mission of the funders. Okay, so there are different funding body and different organizations which are towards the alternative protein, but they should have a similar scope and mission towards what you're writing for. Okay. So, and then are the objectives mentioned in the proposal are clear enough, and are they meeting the expected outcome which you have stated in your proposal? Okay. And then does your idea makes an impact on like measurable change in globally? So that is also some people, some funders would actually test and review before accepting your applications. Then does your entire proposal is persuasive for the funder, so that they are really willing to fund you or sort of grant you the funds. Okay, so these are some of the common mistakes which I also did during my earlier days, and also come through by networking and understanding the people who do write and failed during their initial days of writing proposals. So I would like to share which are the things to avoid. First is, don't try to rush. Don't try to write the proposals in the last minute. Let's say like you have to submit proposal in after a couple of days. Don't try to write now. So try to understand the ecosystem, or try to understand how the funding body works. It's okay to go through the proposal or the application, understand what they expect, okay, and read it, and then submit in the next call. So don't try to submit in a last minute rush, okay. And try not to squeeze too much of information with smaller fonts or narrow margins. So try to be concise, clear, and pretty straightforward what you're writing for, okay. Don't over estimate your deliverables or even the time schedule or budgeting. So try not to over promise your delivers. It's fine to under promise and give or deliver more, but it's not fine to over promise and deliver less. Okay, so keep these things in mind. So okay, so generally people do ignore some of the instructions or guidelines which have been given by the funders. Like some funders would be having specific guidelines of using Times New Roman 12 font or bold or even underline. So try to follow those instructions and guidelines. I know these are not technical issues, but nothing with the science, but funders do check how precise and how attentive you are to while following your instructions for writing the proposals, okay. Citing whatever the sources you cite, right? So try to make sure you open those cited sources, make sure you have access to them, and then only cite. So if you have any source which are not accessible, don't cite them. So generally funders, they do cross-check the cited sources, and then it's better to cross-check before citing them, okay. Then don't mention the claims which are like inflated and which are over like they have to be very significant, and it shouldn't be overinflated claims. So lastly, people who have experience of writing proposals, don't ignore the lessons which you have learned from previous failures or experiences. Either it may be of font size or the pattern, or even the including the bad pictures or bad diagrams. So try to learn lessons from the previous experiences, okay. These are some of the useful links which I found. So obviously this session is recorded, and also I can share the links also as an PPT. If you want, you can take a snapshot of it, okay. That's all. I'm open for Q&A. Thank you everyone for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Harish. Akshay?
Thank you so much, Harish, for this wonderful presentation. So we can quickly move to Q&As, and apart from that, probably Shardul and me, we both can give a little more insights based on how you guys have put together your phase 2 proposals. Obviously, Harish does not have access to them, and that's what he cannot give much insights towards that end. But yeah, feel free to raise your hands if you have additional questions or clarifications. But we have 3 questions right now here in the Q&A section. The first question is by Prerna Balasubramanian. She asks, since we have come up with a novel idea, secondary data or research papers can give us an idea without experimental evidence. Is there any other way we can confidently give our SOP or data analysis for our proposal for this challenge and improve scientific basis? So just to rephrase this, what I understand from this question is, I think Prerna wants to ask that she has come up with a novel idea and therefore she wants to write this proposal without much of experimental evidence. Probably that's their own experimental evidence. But Prerna, if you could just come live and ask your question live, I think it will be much more clarifying. Is she here? Yeah, I can see her.
Yeah, you'll have to just find her from the attendees and promote her so that she can ask her.
Yeah.
So just clarify question as well. I think this is a common question for a lot of people, in track 1 and track 2. As you all know, and Dr. Harish, just for your context as well, we are not able to provide during this 4-month journey any lab support, right? And few people might have access to, given it's a COVID situation, might have access to universities' labs. So ultimately, a lot of it is theoretical, what they are trying to submit as part of
Shardul, I lost you.
Right. For example, one which is people will give secondary data. Sorry, can you hear me now?
No, I
Okay.
lost you from the middle.
Can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah,
Yes.
now better.
Yes, it is better.
Okay, wonderful. So my apologies for the internet. Actually, the question is a larger question that many people might have because just for your context, we are not able to provide any lab support for the challenge, right, for the 4 months, because there are so many number of teams all over India. So it's difficult to coordinate that. So especially when people are coming up with a lot of things around scientific methodology, experimentation, timelines, a lot of it might be arising from secondary research or secondary data or citation, right? So what people are really trying to ask is, this is a novel area to begin with. Not many people have done research, and if the idea is completely novel, what are the best ways to make sure that your submission or proposal is theoretically sound, right? I think that's what Prerna is kind of asking, and maybe you can answer that, and I can let her add anything to her question if it's not answered.
Sure. Like if you don't have the lab facilities or any other facilities to do the research, try to find the collaborators. Okay, so see that what they can bring to your proposal, because ultimately, like if you have even my voice is cracking.
No, sorry, it was not for you, it was for me. You can go ahead. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is try to find the collaborators within your region. Okay, so now the collaboration is like more, even go beyond your region also. If you have a solid collaborator, and if that collaborator can bring some experimental data to your proposal, then definitely it will be a win-win situation for you and also for the collaborator, so that he can get also some funding out of your proposal also, and you will also have a chance to work in his or her lab as an lead scientist of the proposal. I hope I answered your questions.
Absolutely. And just adding a little bit to that as well, right? I think I've answered this a few times in the previous sessions attendees, but basically what you're looking to do here is convey to the judges that, okay, whatever process or SOP or methods I've thought about, there's sound reasoning and logic to it. Here is the citations and secondary data or research papers that I've which are similar, okay? Not exactly to what you're doing or your novel solution, but at least it should be able to give you give the judge a clarity that, okay, the candidates, the teams have thought about what it will take and it's looking sound. Again, adding to the point of collaboration that Dr. Harish said, right? For example, if you show that to a professor or an advisor or a mentor from your university, maybe 4 of you or 3 of you in a team are from different universities. I was giving you an example, right? From last year, somebody from NIFTM was not able to do experimentation because the university was closed down. Their teammate was an ICT, right? And they are one of the attendees as well, Devabrata and their team. So they made sure that their teammate is working on it. Their professors are looking at the data. Again, some of you might not have access to it, but again, you knew all of this while signing up for the challenge. So the best you can really do now is make sure that you have some sort of a validation of it, maybe through an expert or something to that tune, and then you mention that in the proposal. Okay, this is what we have done to make sure and validate our approach is sound. But having said that, these are the limitations that might come up, right, when we actually perform the experimentations. If you say all of those things in your proposal as well, that immediately tells us as judges that, okay, these guys have really thought about it. What are the limitations? What are the shortcomings of their approach? And then they've tried to, address that. So yeah, just adding that. Akshay, anything to add here?
Sorry, nothing specifically here, Shadar. I think you have covered it well, but I would like to give the opportunity to Prerna as well to check whether that answers her question. So if she's here, Prerna, if you could just unmute yourself. And
yeah, hi everyone, this is Prerna. So just to give some context, we are undergraduate and master's students, and we went for track 1. So we were confident with our solution that we gave in phase 2, as we had all the secondary data. But then coming to phase 3, where we want to come up with a SOP for our process that we've come up with. So for that, like to find out the exact amount of quantities of each ingredient to use and all of that, that's where we're kind of having a problem. Like, how do we determine that without experiments? So like you mentioned, if we can look out for some collaborators, maybe it might not be possible in this 1 month, but I think if we carry it forward, we would have to look at a collaborator.
Yeah, in that sense, like maybe if time is a constraint, so maybe like you can look for some similar research paper or database where you're not exactly the same, but similar in different applications they have done, and try to use that as an sort of your citation paper, where you cite that paper as an proof of evidence for your idea, and come up with an graphical representation, so that the funders or the reviewers would understand so where you're coming from, like instead of writing in the words, try to build up in an constructive graphical representation, so that will convey more and detailed information to reviewers.
All right, thank you very much.
okay, great. So I think we can quickly move to the next question. Shakti Lalita is asking, in case of any novel food products, how do we fix the price point for the product? And what factors are to be considered? Harish, please feel free to answer this, and probably Shadul and I can add more insights as well.
So in terms of price, I think like you should look into your components, what are actually the raw materials and how much the cost is for you, and also look for the competitors, or if there is any competitors. So then you address the pricing factor there. So over to Akshay or Shadul.
Shadul, would you like to weigh in here?
Yeah, sure. I think Sakti, the best way to think about a price point, and again, we'll have some sessions around it, which again, as a resource has been shared with all of you previously on our YouTube handle. There are a couple of sessions around this. There are a lot of methods practically when, as an entrepreneur, you're doing this before launching a product, enough people in terms of surveys. Some teams, what they did last time is they created, for example, a feedback form, They kind of explained the idea of their product and just circulated it amongst their batchmates, amongst their colleagues, friends and family, immediate networks, to get some idea of what kind of price people will pay for this, right? In case it's a novel product. Again, what you have to really look at is nothing is so novel. Like there are already 600 plus companies, at least for the plant-based side of things, right? And I don't think a price point would be, as the end product would be very relevant for fermentation or cultivated as of now. But again, there are companies in the market with products out in the market. And again, there's a wide spectrum here, right? In terms of how much markup can you really add compared to. So obviously, for example, if you, I'll give you an example. If you're thinking about plant-based chicken, plant-based mutton, or plant-based egg, or plant-based seafood, or plant-based dairy, start with milk, eggs, dairy, mutton, chicken prices, right? And those are quite less. That's why we keep telling, for example, if you're working on plant-based mutton, you have more room to play with your price structure because it's an expensive meat compared to chicken, right? Similarly, for plant-based egg, if you're proposing a solution which is going to be super expensive and people are used to, say, buying an egg for 5 rupees up to 20-30 rupees for organic fresh eggs, then obviously they're not going to per unit of egg, then they're not looking to pay 100 rupees for an egg, right? Nobody will shift. Probably a very few early adopter customers would shift. Again, you can justify that if your business model, if your idea is looking to solve specifically for that, right? And I'm assuming a lot of this is specific to track 2. In track 1, from a research consideration perspective, growth factor cost, media costs, all of those points, if you're offering that as a solution, you'll have to look at what others are offering. So, pharma grade versus food grade materials, what are their current price points and how do you price it accordingly? So there's again a complete theory and science behind pricing, and we'll cover some of these in some of our sessions, upcoming sessions. But I'll say a simple Google search around fixing novel price point of novel food products or novel technology products might be a good place to start for you to, think about this better. I hope that answers your question, Shakti. You can let us know in the chat if you have any follow-up comment on this.
Yeah, thanks, Shardul, for that. I think we can move to the next question. Pratik is here. Pratik, please ask the question.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Pratik. Well, I just had a quick question. Could you please throw some light on the GTM strategy? How should we approach that, answer to that structure question in our report with some examples, please? Thanks.
Sorry, I didn't get you. What strategy?
Well, I'm asking about the GTM strategy, go to the market strategy. How you want us to structure that in our report.
Okay,
I can take that actually, Dr. Harish.
Sure.
So basically for go-to-market, Pratik, what you're really looking at, and again, I've given some indicators in the evaluation criteria document as well, right? Where we are basically looking for you to kind of talk a little bit about your marketing and sales plan. At the same time, think about how your distribution would be, channels of distribution, in terms of commercialization. What are the specific stages you're looking to kind of a milestone versus timeline kind of a thing where you're looking to go to market at these stages? What are the things you should have ready, in your venture or in your idea to commercialize it? So these are parts of, commercialization, marketing kind of strategy aspects of commercializing your idea. And I think that's where go-to-market strategy becomes a little important. Again, there would be a specific session on this. So I think we'll reserve further thoughts on this question for that session. Would that work, Pratik?
Excellent. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. Anything to add here, Dr. Harish, from based on what I just said?
I think you covered a bit nice on the go-to-market strategy. Thanks, Shardul.
I think it also depends on which area you're working on, Pratik. So whether it's a B2B or B2C, I think your GTM will significantly change.
Both actually, yeah. It would be B2B and C as well. So.
Yeah, like what Shardul said, I think we'll have separate sessions for that where we can dive deep into it and probably we can ask that question to an expert who's going to basically do that webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I muted myself. So the next question is by Swapnil Kamble. So timelines, milestones and budget are dependent upon defined time scale. What time scale, months, years should be used for phase 3? So I can take that question if that's okay, Harish.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Go ahead.
And Shardul, you can also weigh in, like always. So basically, I think what I would recommend, especially for deep technology companies, and especially when you're going in or focusing on, let's say, fermentation or cultivated meat areas, I think the amount of time needed for you to move from bench scale to, let's say, pilot scale and then to commercialization it's quite a long. I think time scale can vary from starting from 3 to 5, 7 years. We are having companies who have said that they'll be launching products but haven't yet been able to do that. So that explains the complexity of producing cultivated meat or fermentation based products, alternative protein products into the market. So conservatively, I would say that probably you can focus on a 3 to 5 year timeline. Obviously, your project proposal depends on, for example, if I'm sure that you are a track 2 participant, your team is a track 2 participant team, but in track 1 versus track 2, track 1 probably could focus on, let's say, an academic kind of a proposal angle in terms of time scales, stretch it a little bit by 5 years and break it down to milestones like over 6 months or 1 year kind of milestones, what you will be achieving each of these years in terms of technological advancement or milestones. And for startups, probably I would recommend like 3 to 5 years of timeline. Get a little more aggressive and bullish and say that you'll be achieving these timelines given what may come, so that you can be a great competitor in the market as well. So that would differ a bit, but that is my suggestion here. But Shardul, please feel free to add more here. Shardul, if you're talking, you're on mute. Yeah, I think Shardul is having some tech issues, but Swapnil, if you do have any add-on questions or thoughts to this, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll just unmute you to ask your question. So in the meanwhile, I think we can move on to the next one. Can you please, Lata Sabam is asking, can you please share some insight on how to work and collate data on supportive pilot data on distribution value supply chain areas? Not sure what this question means. Lata, if you want to ask this live, please go ahead and ask this live. Or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. There are 2 attendees, right? Just a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, my apologies. Can you hear me now, Akshay, by any chance?
Yes, you
Yes.
can.
Sorry, I can answer both previous question and this question. Again, my apologies for the weak internet, but basically about timelines and milestones, right? So Swapnil, to answer your question, it depends completely on the technology area you're in. There is no correct timeline. Again, what we are really looking as judges in your proposal is, does it make sense? Okay, if for example, you're saying, and this is more easier to understand for fermentation and cultivated, is somebody saying they'll do everything in terms of getting the right cell lines and then getting to the bioreactor process for a year. Think about it. What other companies have done practically, especially for track 2. Now, Shiok Meats, for example, today there was news that in the next 18 to 20 months, their products are going to be at shelves, but they're working at it for the past 3 years. So you understand that gives you a practical idea of what the timelines kind of look like. Similarly, for plant-based companies, speak to founders who've actually started companies, right? And ask them, how much time did it really take? Again, it depends on where you are. You know, Maharashtra versus, say, I don't know, Mizoram, these are going to look like different timelines. So depending on where your infrastructure is set up, depending on what technology area you're working on, depending on the complexity of your project, all of these things would really evolve. So there's no correct answer here, but you have to think on these lines and ultimately present a timeline milestone kind of a journey map in your proposal, so that as just we know, okay, this makes sense, because obviously we have experience in looking at a lot of these ideas and proposals from a lot of entrepreneurs, startups, researchers, and scientists, right? So immediately at one look, we can tell, is this feasible, or is this something the teams have proposed without really digging deep into the process parameters, the journey, what it would really take? Have you critically thought about all of these things? Is what you're really looking to, convey. I hope that answers your question there. And I think the second one was from Lata. So it's about distribution and supply chain, and it was about I fully don't really understand this question, so I'll invite Lata to ask her question live, so we can just promote her, Akshay, if you can. Meanwhile, I'll take the next question. It's from Yadaditya. So apart from the proposal writing, he's seen Dr. Harish work on serum-free media. Yadaditya, I don't know what insights you would specifically like, but perhaps Dr. Harish, you can give general high-level insights on, working on serum-free media and its specific importance in the alternative protein or the cultivated meat sector.
Sure, Shardul. Thanks. So generally on the serum-free media, like I worked since my PhD, even in PhD also, like we have worked on specifically on skin stem cells and epithelial cells. So where we have narrowed down from 25 different components to 5 components of the serum-free. So it was then we also worked on the animal component-free medium conditions for stem cells, especially for the epithelial stem cells. So as Shardul said, so maybe like I want something specific question on what actually you're looking for on serum-free media.
Yeah, so Yadaditya, again, I'll invite you to ask your question live and kind of, and again, this is a great point, right? When you're submitting your questions through the Q&A button, this is like for everyone, right? Not just Yadaditya. Make sure you detail out as much as possible. Take that time to think about your context. So for example, if you tell what idea you're working on, what track you're working on, and then ask your question and at length, it's very, very easy for speakers. And this is not just for this session, all upcoming sessions, right? To answer it and then save time and back and forth. But having said that, I will promote people to ask their questions now. If anybody wants to resubmit their question with more detail, feel free to do that. Yeah, okay. So Dr. Gupta, can we use GFI research team? So as an organization, Dr. Gupta, we are not able to, for example, validate before the submission of proposal any ideas for giving data or any research items, right? So through GFI or its team members, it's not possible to do that. Having said that, our goal always as a nonprofit is to transfer our knowledge into outward facing documents. And everything that we have worked on is already out there in the public domain through our different papers, opportunity papers, industry papers, sometimes knowledge papers, webinars, podcasts. So I guess that's the best way of validating any of your idea or parameters therein. Now, specifically about distribution and supply chain, there are a few sessions, there are a few people working on these areas within our community, right? There could be Urban Platter, there could be Vegan Dukaan. In fact, we have a session with Vegan Dukaan and a couple of other people, as you might have seen from the scheduling sheet in mid-January, right? So that might be a great point for you to again get in touch with the speakers and ask them about these areas. Yeah. Okay, so I think Srinidhi, for your question, the key attributes and main factors were all that were covered by Dr. Harish. And again, what I would really like to bridge the gap here is Dr. Harish gave an excellent presentation on the basics of how to write a proposal. Now, obviously, when you're thinking about the evaluation criteria, right, that we have provided you guys in the chat box today also, and it has been sent to you multiple times throughout the past couple of months, 2.5 months, it's very, very important to know that what are you thinking? We have given you some suggested questions in each of the parameters that we are looking to evaluate, right? How you can think about those attributes and key factors. So I would say focus on those key factors, Srinidhi. Other than that, a couple of points that I love Dr. Harish mentioned is don't start late, because it's very, very easily, and I said this in the chat box, but it's very, very easily understandable which team has started working, say, a few days in advance to the deadline versus somebody who's really taken the time, engaged with resources in phase 1, phase 2. Like I saw a question about liquid state fermentation in the chat about what is the technology that we can really focus on. That's your job, right? Really, as participants, understanding who you can connect with. What we have done as a nonprofit sector building organization is give you all the tools. We have a platform where there are more than 800 people. A lot of them are fermentation. So have you really tried connecting with people from the databases? Have you really signed up for the GF Ideas India community? Have you connected with professors or other candidates who are working on fermentation through the Slack channel? Those are some key things to understand. Even if you're not from a technical background, right? If you're coming from a business background, that's what's quite important to do in terms of obtaining further details of the fermentation process. Reading up research papers on Google Scholar, ResearchGate would be a great point to just start of understanding what technical solutions or processes are people following. Now, obviously, your team is based in Hyderabad, and there are a few good organizations there, perhaps as well, to begin exploring. CCMB is one. There might be a few more. Osmania University has some fermentation as well. So similarly, try to find out what universities or organizations in your state, because it's obvious, like in today's day and age, really geographies are not barriers. You can set up a call with anybody anywhere in the world and understand about their experience, say in liquid state fermentation or whatever. So I hope that some of these things are helping answer your questions. Yeah. So that's also answered. Now, having said that, we've answered all the questions that we had in the Q&A button. I see a couple of raised hands here. So I'm going to invite Manoj to ask his question.
Good evening, everyone. Shardul, I have same question as I asked previously, because it is important, because it is having around 10 marks. Okay, so the question is, it is the second last point, that please confirm that your project is not having any animal studies. So in my project, it is scientifically it is needed to be added, that animal experimentation need to be added. Then and then we can use that product for the human beings. Okay, so at the second point, we can also give that, okay, there is no study needed for this project. But the thing is, scientifically, it should be added. So what to do?
I understand your question, Manoj. You asked this last time as well. Akshay and Harish were not there. So let me contextualize your question for them as well. So Harish and Akshay, what Manoj is looking to get an answer on is, in our evaluation criteria, what we have mentioned is, hey, if you're planning to do whatever clinical studies or studies which require animal components, try to think. And again, my answer to Manoj last time was, because the whole mandate is to remove animals from the value chain and also from research. I understand that sometimes for research is difficult, but Dr. Harish, you started speaking to it in terms of FBS, right? And maybe there are some other application areas as well in cultivated meat value chain space, where perhaps you are seeing examples of researchers and entrepreneurs finding alternatives to animal testing. So can you just highlight those and kind of help Manoj understand what we really mean by this point?
Yeah, sure. So animal alternatives in generally is being promoted for testing cosmetics and other chemicals also. Either it may be on the skin or even on the internal organs also. So we do have some like services in India and also beyond that who can help you to test on your chemicals or compounds which you're going to test in vivo. So try to look for animal alternative options, or even the simulated options also is a good option to consider. So they also called it as in silico models. Okay, so which can actually relate your concept to the realistic in vivo environment. So try to look for such models for your proposed idea. So did I answer your question, Manoj?
Yes, but the thing is, whenever we are it is having, FDA has given a limit that this amount of particular phenolic compound, it should be lesser than 0.045%. So we have achieved that concentration in our lab. Okay, but then also it need to be tested on the animals like rats, or such studies are needed before going for its commercial application. So if we are doing only in vivo on the cells, or I think it will be not sufficient to take a product directly into the market on the basis of in vivo studies. So this is the thing actually. It always confuses me. That's why I am extending this question. Yes.
In that case, you should follow ISO assays. Okay, so ISO assays are like more specific for testing the in vitro toxicity, in vitro even at the genotoxicity level, even at the chromosome level also. You can test that And if there is a very must to include animal studies by the FDA before commercialization, so I think you have to include that at least in small animal studies, if not the big animals.
Okay, thank you
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
much.
So Manoj, my answer was quite similar last time also, right? The
Yes,
point
sir.
here is if something's mandatory, right? If the law,
Yes.
like, see, your confusion is stemming from the fact that one thing is compliance, right, with the bodies, other is innovation, right? Everybody
Yes.
thought that it's compliant to do like use FBS because that was the only method. So sometimes in clinical testing and approvals, what is needed, that's needed. There's no doubt about it, right? You cannot change the policy. What government
Yes.
mandates or what safety standards authorities require, that's obviously there, that's a given. But having said that, are there better ways that you can include as a researcher, as a young thinker who's thinking about innovative ways of doing things to bypass that? That's why people came up with solutions for not using FBAs, right, in the first place. And that's an example which is most common, which is easy to understand for everyone. Now some of you might be confused what's in vivo, what's in vitro, but I think a lot of you with the science background are kind of getting this, and I'll recommend teammates who are from a business background to get in touch with your scientific teammates to understand a little bit more about this. But Akshay, any further thoughts on this?
I think mainly what answer you and Harish gave probably is something which I would also recommend. Apart from that, probably I think it again depends on which region you're focusing on, right? So for example, if you're focusing on India in terms of getting regulatory approvals for launching your product in the market, I think there'll be slightly or probably significantly different, let's say, set of criteria which you have to meet. And probably there'll be involvement of animal testing as well. I think this confusion probably also stems from the fact that you want to make a product animal cruelty free or something. But at the end of the day, when we talk about animal testing, you should also make sure that animal testing is not a part and parcel of your product throughout the product life cycle. Like for example, once you've done that testing and prove that this is safe for consumption, I think that's that, and still you can give your product a tag of cruelty free. Correct?
Yes. I convince with you because it is done once. Because whenever the product will go to the market, after that it is, and there is no need to test it again and again. But once it need to be done. Yes.
Exactly. So you frame your proposal and your answers and your methods accordingly in the proposal.
Yes. Can I ask one more question?
Sure, Manoj, go on.
If possible. So the second question is, usually when we are writing projects, so funding agencies are taking around 6 months or 7 months, like 8 months also. So whether we can submit the same kind of project to other agency also. So this sometimes create confusion, means either we need to be submitted or not. So what you suggest about this?
So just to clarify the question, basically what Manoj is asking is, hey, I've created an idea proposal. Am I submitting it the same thing to multiple? So my answer here would be, think about the context of the organization which is funding, right? You can obviously use the same material, but you'll have to contextualize each time, not just, submitting the exact same document everywhere. To increase your chances of getting visibility with the agency or with the judges or whoever's evaluating your proposals, you have to think where they're coming from, what their mandate is, what specific wording, language in the proposal. In fact, even the way they have, like Dr. Harish was telling, sometimes guidelines are given, formats are given. Complying to all of those things are very important, but you can obviously, it's your work, you can use it for multiple times. But I'll let Akshay and Harish kind of further add on to this.
I would like to add some stuff like, you can submit similar concepts, but not identical. Okay, so try not to same if you follow the guidelines and change the font size or the formatting of your text, but try not to use the same exact copy paste. So try to conceptualize and try to rephrase the same stuff, but in a different manner. So that would help you to protect your IP, and also to protect your not duplicating the applications, because you never know, a few funding bodies would share same reviewers, right? So you don't know who are the reviewers and where they are coming from. So for example, if the two funding bodies are on stem cell based and your proposal is totally on stem cell based, definitely the funding bodies will send to the stem cell scientists. So right, so they shouldn't get that same application and exactly same copy paste of your proposal from two different organizations. So that will be a conflict for you as well.
The same here. I don't have anything to add. What Harish has covered most of it. I think depending on your proposal, for example, if it's for profit or for non-profit, for example, if you're doing academic research, I think you need to tweak your proposal or break it down into, for example, if you have a very large proposal, break it down to a couple of 2 or 3 proposals and submit to different bodies. And again, that could be overlap of reviewers, and that could pose problems for you. I think we lost him, and
I just transferred him to attendees, but yeah, just adding a quick point here, right? Like the whole point that GFI is trying to do here through this challenge is to get you all, whether you're a master's, bachelor's, PhD student, or industrial researcher, especially in track 1, right, to create a proposal which you can keep using. Obviously, don't copy paste, don't come in a situation where you're submitting the exact same things. Like very, very important, the reviewers might be same. They might think, hey, this guy is submitting. Again, read the guidelines very carefully. Some organizations might say that, okay, if you're submitting a proposal and working with an incubation center or acceleration center on a specific idea, you might not do that exact same thing with somebody else, etc., etc. Consider. So think about those guidelines as well while you're kind of thinking about this point. I hope that helps. Yeah, just let us know in the chat if that answered your question. And then we have one more question coming in from Swapnil. So Akshay, do you want to take that?
Yeah, in short, we don't, at least for the challenge, we don't require any ethical clearance. I think you might need to have ethical clearance from your specific institution. I think probably Swapnil, I think you know it very well. If you have ethical clearance in your institution, I think you can just go ahead and work on your, let's say, bench scale optimization of your idea. But yeah, in short, there wouldn't be any requirement for ethical clearance until and unless it becomes product at the end of the day.
Awesome, great. So yeah, long story short, for people who don't know what ethical clearance is, something which is more specific to cultivated and fermentation kind of categories, largely. But for novel methods and plant-based, that might come up. Again, for this time, we don't require it for the challenge, but at least you can lay out what would be, for example, if it's very, very crucial to your idea and your proposal, you should lay out what would be the steps. Why do you think you'd be able to get it, etc., etc. You don't have to actually get it, to just add value to your proposal. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so having said that, we have one more question from Shama. So I think this should be our last question because we're running out of time. But Shama, please go ahead and ask a question.
Good evening. I just wanted to ask, in the scientific design part, are we expected to write the detailed proposal or just the general proposal is okay? Detailed proposal in the sense the exact experiments that we'll be doing and the protocols of these experiments, or just the general brief of these protocols will be enough?
A general brief should do, Shama. Just keep in mind that it's a 25-page proposal and you have various areas to cover. As long as you convey the information and you support your brief explanation of your scientific design with ample, let's say, literature support, I think that should be fine.
Yeah, and also in the experiment, the infrastructure, if you are already in an incubator, can we take that into context and talk about the resources that we can get from there?
Absolutely.
Or should we? Okay, so we can just, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And just adding on, because a lot of people might have this question, right? Again, in track 1, the scientific methodology is super important. Again, you have only 15 to 20 pages to do that, right? And why do we give 25 pages for track 2 and not for track 1? And that's because for track 2, people have to think about business commercialization. That's why the added length in the proposal submission guidelines, right? For them to work on these things and also highlight that. But any scientific proposals for track 1 has to be concise, at the same time be having enough depth of processes and methodologies so that you're building on from your 5-page proposal. In 5 pages, you just gave very general idea, right? So obviously, Shama, you'll have to dig a little deep down and kind of elaborate on these things in our phase 3 submissions. And that's true for everybody in track 1 and track 2 as well, on all different evaluation parameters in the evaluation criteria sheet. Having said that, definitely use all the resources available to you. That's the whole point. When we're thinking about team, right? Team composition, and overall, it becomes very, very easy for us to know that, okay, this is a solid proposal, high quality proposal, if people have actually thought about this. Okay, if somebody, again, I keep giving examples of NIFTM and ICT because those are institutes I've been most associated with. But for example, if you're at NIFTM and you know that there's an extruder in your pilot plant there, or maybe if you're from a college which does not have that, then in either of those cases, you try to bridge that gap by saying, how will you access the infrastructure that is needed for your proposal, right? Have you contacted any scientists? Have you contacted any research organization? Have you contacted any cell banks? Have you contacted any extruder manufacturers? Do you know what the cost of these products or infrastructure of equipments look like? Have you accounted for all of that in your proposal, in your budget, etc., etc.? All of those things are how you should be thinking about this. I hope that helps, Shama.
Yeah.
Just to add a little bit more here, I think everyone, I mean, all the participants and team should focus on the evaluation criteria again, based on the points weightage. Obviously, there are different areas and with different point weightage, and I think the focus should also vary as per the weightage of the points for both track 1 and track 2.
Awesome, great. So thank you, Shama. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. So I don't think we have any questions, Akshay.
Yeah, thanks, Shardul, and thanks, Dr. Harish, for making the time today to give a wonderful webinar on how to create a proposal for funding for both research as well as business. And it was great having you here. And for all the participants, please stay tuned to our next webinar. I think that is going to happen this Friday. It's going to be on design thinking as well as how do you structure your USP, unique value proposition or unique selling point, unique selling proposition. So please stay tuned for that and have a wonderful evening, everyone. So I'll stop the recording now.
Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Shardul, and entire GFI India team for this wonderful opportunity. It was great speaking with you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harish.
Taking the point from the networking slide that Dr. Harish was saying, feel free to reach out to more people, not just Dr. Harish, other folks from the community. Like I said, it's super important. That's why I said in the chat, it's a very simple point, but very, very important point. Just networking with the right people. Ultimately, everything that you're trying to do, nobody knows everything, right? There are experts in a lot of different fields. Sometimes you're trying to learn areas which you don't have a background in. It's very, very important to talk to other people in your cohort. So ultimately, a rising tide kind of lifts all boats. And say, for example, if you're a biotech entrepreneur and you're thinking about food category, there might be somebody, like there are teams working on distribution, there are teams working on supply chain. And again, those teams might be looking for people with a scientific background to help them understand, okay, what are the shelf stability issues? This is just an example, but the point we are really trying to make here is the power is in the cohort and your diverse backgrounds, and not just within the ISPIC cohort, but the larger smart protein ecosystem or the alternative protein ecosystem globally that GFI and other organizations are trying to create. So definitely keep doing that. And we are really happy that you all joined us today, and see you for the next session. Yeah, thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Harish, for your